Birthdays are supposed to feel magical. A day where laughter echoes, balloons dance in the air, and the warmth of friends and family wraps around you like a gift itself. For me, birthdays were always more than just cakes and candles. They were promises. Promises that I wasn't invisible, that I mattered enough for people to pause their busy lives and celebrate me. This year, I wanted it to be unforgettable. I had just stepped out of one of the hardest seasons of my life, and I told myself that this birthday would be different, brighter, louder, filled with the kind of joy that could erase the shadows of loneliness that sometimes crept in at night. I polished the idea in my head like a gem. A table spread with homemade dishes, a cake glowing with candles, and the sound of my daughter's laughter mixing with my parents' cheerful voices. Every invitation I sent carried a piece of my heart. Every decoration I bought was a whisper of hope. I imagined the hugs, the chatter, the clinking of glasses, and the feeling of belonging. But as I would soon discover, reality has a cruel way of twisting dreams. What started as a day of anticipation would unravel into silence, heartbreak, and a mystery I never expected to face. The week leading up to my birthday was a whirlwind of planning and anticipation. I threw myself into the details with a kind of childlike excitement, as though decorating the house and perfecting the menu could somehow guarantee happiness. Every trip to the store felt like I was gathering pieces of a dream, vibrant balloons in shades of gold and silver, streamers that shimmered under the light, and little party favors I imagined my guests would smile over. I even picked out the cake myself, a 3-layer masterpiece of chocolate and vanilla swirls crowned with delicate sugar roses. The baker raised an eyebrow when I asked for something so elaborate, but I insisted. "It's going to be special," I said with a smile that hid my nervousness. After all, you only get one chance each year to feel celebrated. At home, I spent hours rearranging the living room. I strung fairy lights across the windows so the house would glow warmly from the outside, a beacon of welcome to anyone walking up the path. I set out fresh flowers in vases, their fragrance mingling with the scent of the cookies I baked that morning. I imagined the scene when everyone arrived, the doorbell ringing, laughter spilling into the hallway, arms opening for hugs. I prepared not just food, but hope. Every dish I cooked was seasoned with love and expectation. Crispy spring rolls, creamy pasta, fruit punch sparkling with crushed ice, and little sandwiches shaped like hearts. I could already hear my parents praising the spread, my daughter clapping her hands in delight, and my friends joking about how I had gone over the top again. But beneath all that effort, a small knot of worry kept tugging at me. Memories of past years surfaced, birthdays where people canceled last minute or arrived late, or seemed distracted. I brushed those thoughts aside, convincing myself that this year would be different. This year, they would show up. By the night before, the house looked like something out of a magazine. I stood in the center of the room, staring at the decorations, my heart swelling with both pride and longing. I whispered to myself, "Tomorrow I won't feel alone. Tomorrow they'll all be here." I didn't know then how wrong I was, or how heavy silence can feel when it replaces the sound of celebration. The morning of my birthday felt like the opening scene of a movie I had been waiting my whole life to watch. Sunlight streamed through the curtains as if nature itself had decided to celebrate with me. I woke up early, buzzing with nervous excitement, and went straight into the kitchen to check the food. The cake sat proudly in the center of the table, its sugar roses gleaming under the soft light, while the dishes I prepared were neatly arranged and waiting to be served. I wore my favorite outfit, a soft blue dress that always made me feel confident. I even added a touch of perfume, the kind I usually save for special occasions. Standing in front of the mirror, I smiled at my reflection, imagining the compliments I would receive. For once, I wanted to feel radiant, wanted people to see the effort I had poured into everything. By noon, the house was ready, glowing with fairy lights and bright balloons that swayed gently every time the door opened. My daughter, full of excitement, kept asking, "When will everyone come, Mama?" Her innocent joy made me believe, more than ever, that the day would be perfect. I checked my phone constantly, scrolling through messages, expecting reminders like "on my way" or "can't wait to see you," but the screen remained quiet. At the time the first guests were supposed to arrive, I brushed off the silence with optimism. "They're just running late," I told myself. People always take their time getting ready. I turned on soft music, lit a few scented candles, and waited at the door for the first knock. Minutes stretched into an hour. The balloon swayed, the candles flickered, and my phone remained stubbornly silent. My daughter's questions grew less frequent, and I could see the confusion beginning to cloud her bright eyes. I tried to distract her with snacks, but inside, my heart was sinking. By mid-afternoon, the once lively house began to feel painfully empty. I refreshed my phone again and again, hoping for a message that would explain the delay. Nothing. Not a single call. The silence became unbearable. The kind of silence that doesn't just fill a room but echoes inside your chest, reminding you how alone you really are. I sat by the window, staring out at the street, hoping to see a familiar car pull up. Every sound from outside, a passing bicycle, a dog barking, the wind rustling through the trees, made me look up in desperate hope, only to be disappointed again. As the hours dragged on, reality settled in like a storm cloud. Nobody was coming. Not my parents, not my friends, not a single person I had invited. The food sat untouched, the cake untouched, the decorations meaningless. When evening fell, I finally blew out the candles myself. No one sang happy birthday. No one clapped. The only sound was my daughter's small, confused voice asking, "Mama, why didn't they come?" I couldn't answer her. I just pulled her close, fighting back tears. The night ended not with laughter and music, but with a cruel weight of disappointment pressing against my chest. That night, I realized that silence could be louder than any crowd and far more painful. That night, long after my daughter had fallen asleep, I sat alone in the dim glow of the fairy lights I had so carefully hung. The decorations no longer looked festive. They looked mocking, like bright reminders of happiness that never arrived. The untouched food spread across the table was a cruel testament to my wasted hope. The cake, once a symbol of joy, now felt like a monument to loneliness. I tried to eat a slice, but every bite tasted like ashes. My chest was heavy, as if disappointment itself had weight, pressing down on me until I could barely breathe. I finally pushed the plate away, burying my face in my hands as silent tears slid down my cheeks. The next morning, I avoided the living room altogether. I couldn't bring myself to look at the wilted flowers, the half-deflated balloons, or the dishes that had gone cold overnight. Instead, I stayed in my bedroom, scrolling endlessly through my phone, desperate for an explanation. I checked my messages again. Nothing. Not a single apology. Not even a casual excuse. As the days passed, the silence from my family and friends grew heavier. I told myself maybe they were busy, maybe something urgent had come up, but deep down, a darker thought gnawed at me. What if they just didn't care? That question haunted me every time I opened my phone and saw no new messages. I found myself withdrawing from everything. I didn't answer calls from work. I avoided neighbors. I even stopped posting on social media, afraid that people would see through my forced smiles. At night, I lay awake replaying the scene of that empty party over and over. The untouched plates, the unopened gifts, the silence. Worst of all was the confusion in my daughter's eyes. She kept asking gentle questions the days that followed. Did Grandma forget? Did Uncle have to work? Will they come next weekend? I gave her vague answers, but each one felt like another crack in the fragile shield I had built to protect her from disappointment. For the first time in a long while, I began to doubt myself, not just as a friend or a daughter, but as a person. Was I so easy to forget? Did I matter so little that my birthday could come and go without anyone noticing? The loneliness became a shadow that followed me everywhere, a shadow I could not shake. And yet, deep in that silence, I also felt a question forming. Not just why didn't they come, but what truth is hiding behind this emptiness? It would take exactly 1 week for that truth to come knocking at my door. 7 days passed, but the sting of that silent birthday lingered like an unhealed wound. Every morning, I woke up hoping to see a message, a missed call, something that would explain the emptiness of that night. Each time, the screen stayed blank and the knot in my chest grew tighter. By the 7th day, I had almost convinced myself to stop waiting. Maybe the people I loved had simply chosen not to come. Maybe the truth was as simple and as cruel as that. I busied myself with chores, pretending life was normal, though inside I was unraveling. That evening, just as the sun began to dip and paint the sky in shades of orange and violet, there was a knock at my door. The sound startled me, sharp, unexpected, cutting through the silence that had become my constant companion. My heart leapt in my chest. For a moment, I froze, afraid it might just be a delivery or a neighbor asking for sugar. But something in me whispered, "This is it." When I opened the door, I found my mother standing there. Her face looked pale, her eyes tired, as though she had carried a heavy secret for days. In her hands, she clutched a small gift bag, simple, almost apologetic. "Can we talk?" she asked softly. I wanted to slam the door, to shout, to demand why she hadn't come when I needed her most. But instead, I stepped aside and let her in, because the part of me that craved answers outweighed my anger. Inside, she sat at the very table that had been laid out for my party, the table that still bore faint traces of that night. She glanced at the faded balloons, the crumbs of the uneaten cake I hadn't thrown away, and her eyes filled with tears. "I know you're hurt," she began, her voice trembling, "and you have every right to be. But there's something you don't know." Her words sent a shiver down my spine. I leaned forward, bracing myself. The air between us felt heavy, charged with the weight of the explanation I had been waiting for all week. She reached across the table, her hand trembling as it rested on mine. "Nobody forgot you," she whispered. "Something happened that night, something we couldn't tell you right away." My pulse quickened. Every possibility raced through my mind. An accident, an argument, a betrayal. Whatever it was, I knew my life was about to change again. And as she began to reveal the truth, I realized that the silence of that birthday had been hiding more than neglect. It had been hiding a secret I never saw coming. My mother's words hung in the air like a storm cloud about to break. I stared at her, my heart pounding, desperate for answers but terrified of what they might be. She drew in a shaky breath before continuing. "That evening, when we were all supposed to come here, something unexpected happened. Your father collapsed." The room spun for a moment. My father, strong, stubborn, always brushing off doctor's visits, had collapsed? She nodded, reading the panic in my eyes. "We rushed him to the hospital. It was sudden, terrifying. We didn't know if he was going to make it. Everyone you invited, your brothers, your cousins, even your closest friends, they were all there with us. We didn't want to overwhelm you with panic in the middle of your celebration, so nobody called right away. The truth is, while you were waiting here, alone, we were sitting in the hospital praying he would survive." Tears stung my eyes, blurring the fairy lights that still twinkled faintly in the corner of the room. My anger, which had burned hot for days, wavered under the weight of her explanation. I whispered, "Why didn't anyone tell me?" She lowered her gaze. "Because I want to protect you. It was your birthday. We didn't want you to forever associate with fear and grief. But I realize now, in trying to spare you pain, we left you with something even worse, the belief that you were abandoned." Her words pierced me deeper than any silence had. I thought back to that night, the untouched food, my daughter's confused eyes, my own spiral into loneliness, and realized the cruel irony. While I sat believing I had no one, my family had been gathered together, fighting for one of the most important lives in ours. A sob escaped my lips, a mix of guilt, relief, and sorrow. My mother squeezed my hand, tears spilling down her cheeks. "He's stable now," she said softly. "It's going to be a long road, but he's alive. We should have told you sooner. Please forgive us." In that moment, the loneliness that haunted me for a week melted into something else, a painful but undeniable truth. I was not forgotten. I was not unloved. The silence of that night hadn't been rejection. It had been sacrifice. Still, the ache remained. My birthday would forever carry the memory of sitting alone, but now it also carried the reminder that life is fragile, and love sometimes hides behind choices we don't immediately understand. I reached across the table and hugged my mother, clinging to her as tears streamed down both our faces. The anger inside me dissolved, replaced with a quiet gratitude. The truth had broken me, but it had also set me free. That night, after my mother left, I sat in the quiet once more, but it no longer felt like the suffocating silence of abandonment. It was different now, gentler, filled with the weight of understanding. I replayed every detail of my lonely birthday in my mind, but this time I saw it through a new lens. The absence hadn't been indifference. It had been necessity. While I sat in despair, my family had been fighting a battle I hadn't even known existed. The next morning, I visited my father in the hospital. Walking to the sterile halls, I felt my chest tighten with a cocktail of emotions. Fear, relief, guilt, and love all tangled together. When I entered his room and saw him lying there, pale but alive, something inside me shifted. He smiled weakly, reaching for my hand, and in that single gesture I felt the truth. I hadn't been forgotten. I had always been part of something larger, something fragile but unbreakable. Family. Over the next few days, I spoke with everyone who hadn't come to the party. Each conversation brought a new wave of clarity. My brothers described the chaos of rushing our father into the emergency room. My cousins admitted they had debated leaving to check on me, but stayed, afraid to leave my mother alone. Even my closest friends, who I thought had simply ignored me, explained how they had gone straight to the hospital the moment they heard. Their absence had been love in disguise, misplaced but genuine. It wasn't easy to let go of the hurt. The image of that empty house, of blowing out my candles alone, would always sting. But healing isn't about erasing scars. It's about learning to live with them, to see the strength they represent. That night had shown me how deeply loneliness could wound, but it also revealed how much I truly mattered, even if I hadn't seen it at the time. I returned home and finally cleared away the remnants of the party, the drooping balloons, the stale food, the melted wax on the cake. But instead of tears, I felt a quiet peace. As I packed everything away, I realized something profound. Celebration doesn't come from decorations or perfectly planned evenings. It comes from the people we love and the moments, good or bad, we share with them. When my next birthday comes, I know it won't be flawless. Life rarely is. But I also know I won't measure it by who shows up at the door or who sends a message. Instead, I'll measure by the love I know exists, even when it hides behind silence. Because sometimes the greatest gifts come not in the form of parties and presents, but in the raw, messy reminder that we are not alone, even when it feels like we are.